welcome to all of you at this second annual Rally for Our Rights. We are all here to lift up reproductive rights, voting rights, the rights of Black and Indigenous people and people of color, LGBTQ plus rights, disability rights, freedom from gun violence, immigrant rights, and environmental justice, and more. It is our fight for our rights, the rights of all of us. The 2023 election is crucial. Every seat on your ballot is important this year, from school board there's the candidate. From school board to town council, from county-wide offices to judicial seats. After last year's rally, Progress PA sought to improve our attention to the needs of those with disabilities. This year, we have made several intentional disability considerations. The sensory tent is one such consideration, and it's located back there, the red tent back there of a sports team I won't mention. And we want to thank Kaylee Hegerly for volunteering her time to oversee the sensory tent. And disability information and a list of organizations is available at the sensory tent and the welcome table to help educate us and increase our awareness. Please enjoy the delicious food offerings while supplies last. Okay, thank you. While supplies last, the food is back there from 4 local women-owned businesses. And please visit the tables of all the organizations and campaigns that have come out to table tonight. The restrooms are located around the back of the pavilion and are located on the same level as this pavilion floor. And now, I am thrilled to introduce to you our MC for this rally. Allegheny County Councilperson at Large Bethany Hallam has long been a vocal supporter of all varieties of criminal legal reform. Councilperson Hallam serves on Allegheny County's Jail Oversight Board, using her lived experiences to advocate for better jail conditions. She remains committed to the vision of a more just, equitable, and inclusive Allegheny County. Please welcome our MC, Allegheny County Councilperson at Large, Bethany Hallam.
Tonight. All right, I don't think everybody heard the instructions. Let's get on over here. We're having a party. We are rallying for our rights. And I'm not going to lie, I've been looking around this event and it seems like every single cool person I know in Allegheny County is here tonight. So all Ians are in really good company. We are going to hear from some fabulous candidates, some fabulous speakers. And really what I want you all to remember tonight is, all right, I'm riled up and I'm ready to go, but what am I going to do next? How am I going to make sure that I protect the rights of my neighbors, that we protect Allegheny County for generations to come? And so with that, we are going to kick off with a pretty awesome slate of judicial candidates back here behind me. We are going to have a judicial forum featuring Judge Dan McCaffrey, Jill Beck, and Patrick Sleemy. So I know a lot of the time we get caught up in what's happening in Washington, D.C., what's going on with our federal level of government, but what's really going to affect your life the most is what's happening in your own backyard. The statewide courts in Pennsylvania are really up for control this year. We need to keep control. We need to gain control. We need to do whatever we can. We have seen cases going in front of these statewide courts. We need to set precedents so that our local level legislators can continue fighting for all of us. So, let me tell you a little bit about this slate we have here. First of all, Judge Dan McCaffrey is our Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania Supreme Court. I personally am a little familiar with the Pennsylvania Supreme Court because Donald Trump sued me in 2020 and that's where the case went to. Dan McCaffrey served as the Assistant District Attorney in the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office. He was elected to the Philadelphia Court of Common Pleas and later was elected Judge of the Pennsylvania Superior Court. Judge Daniel McCaffrey is currently the only military veteran on the Pennsylvania appellate courts. The Supreme Court appointed him to serve on the Court of Judicial Discipline to adjudicate all actions brought against judicial officers in Pennsylvania. I am so excited. Let's give it up for our Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania Supreme Court, Judge Daniel McCaffrey. And next, a woman who needs no introduction. We have Jill Beck, one of our 2 Democratic nominees for the 2 open seats on the Pennsylvania Superior Court. I know and you know that we are all going to be out on those doors in November making sure we send Jill Beck and Tamika Lane to fight for all of us on the Superior Court. Especially since she'll be gone because she'll be on the Supreme Court, right? Yeah, all right. At the start of her career, Jill legally represented abused and neglected children in court proceedings, also working to ensure that their basic human needs were met. She spent 10 years as a law clerk at the Superior Court in the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. She's currently a civil litigator, and she continues to help the underserved in Pennsylvania's legal system. Let's give it up for our Democratic nominee for Pennsylvania Superior Court, Jill Beck. Next, Patrick Sweeney. I could go on for about 2 hours about this guy, but I'm going to stick to the script tonight, all right? Patrick Sweeney has been a public defender in Allegheny County for 25 years. We love public defenders up in here. He works tirelessly on behalf of clients and has appeared in every division of the Court of Common Pleas. Alongside his legal career, he is the bargaining unit secretary of the United Steelworkers Local 3403-74. Let's give it up for the union workers in the house. And again, let me hear a round of applause for our Democratic nominee for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas, Patrick Sweeney. All right, now I have a couple questions. If you guys are cool with that, you guys want to hear from the candidates a little bit? Yeah. All right. So first, Patrick, this one's for you. Explain how courts can affect the average citizen.
Well, as a public defender, I represent very much average citizens, but I think every person that is impacted by the courts, unfortunately, they're impacted in a way that is somewhat negative. If you're a defendant in criminal court, you certainly don't want to be there. If you're the victim of a crime, you're not real happy about having been a crime victim in the first place. If you're a witness to a case and you've been subpoenaed to come to court to testify, you might have to take off work. You don't necessarily receive a great deal of compensation to do that. And that's just in criminal court. The 4 divisions that were mentioned earlier, there's family court, there's orphans court. Orphans court deals with guardianships and mentally incapacitated people. Civil division, of course, are your lawsuits, slip and falls, asbestos cases, anything involving money. If you trip on the way into the courthouse and you sue the county, that would end up in civil division. Family court is now our largest division. It deals with divorces, it deals with custody fights, it deals with any type of law involving juveniles, whether it be juvenile criminal delinquency or juvenile dependency for kids that are having trouble adjusting. I guarantee you that everyone who goes into that family court building is not happy about being there at all. When I started with the Public Defender's Office 26 almost years ago, there was only one floor in the court system that had metal detectors, and that was the 6th floor of the city-county building, which is where the family courts were at that time. And they had this display of all the weapons that they confiscated. But you could walk into any courthouse and walk into any courtroom without going through a metal detector. But family court is so intense, and everyone's so miserable about being there because you're there because your family's falling apart. You're in trouble. You're in trouble with the law. You're in trouble at school. Your marriage is dissolving, or you're having a custody fight. No one's happy about being involved in the court system. if that is involved. As judges and as lawyers who represent people that are in that, we do the best we can to try and ameliorate the misery and the suffering of it. And we also have to pay a great deal of attention to people's rights. Every single day, of course, I'm going into court on behalf of people that have a right to a trial. They have a right to be considered presumed innocent as a matter of law. The judge certainly presiding over the case must guarantee that, but we go a step further and guarantee they have a lawyer who's going to stand up and advocate for them as well. And that's where I come in for the people that can't afford their own lawyer. But everyone else who can afford their own lawyer, has the right to retain their counsel and have that person speak on their behalf. I'm hearing my time is up. Basically, what happens in the common pleas level are crises and dispute resolution, and that's what we do every single day. And we do the best we can to help these disputes be resolved in a way that everyone leaves the courthouse feeling that they have been heard and feeling that they have received some kind of justice, no matter what the outcome was. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. We've all seen the harm that the legal system causes in our communities from the top down. We need to make sure that we're sending judges to all the different courts throughout this Commonwealth to make sure that justice is truly what is on the table. For too long, justice has not been served, and we have a new wave coming in. We elected some awesome judges in 2021. Let's keep that rolling at the Court of Common Pleas to 2023 with Patrick Sweeney, right? Next question for Jill Back. What are the challenges facing judicial candidates and campaigns when you're out in this wild campaign cycle?
Thanks for asking. Look, being a judicial candidate has a lot of challenges. We are not allowed, for example, to talk about how we would rule on a case. Everybody wants to know our stances on policy. We can't talk about that. We can talk about our personal opinions, but as they say, that and $2 will get you a cup of coffee these days. The other thing is people are not attuned and don't fully understand what our judiciary does as a separate co-equal branch of government. A lot of people think, well, I'm not litigious, I'm not a criminal, I'm not involved in a family dispute, so I don't need to care about who's elected to these courts. I mean, that's wrong for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is you don't usually get to choose when you come into court. That usually happens to you. And you want to hedge your bets and make sure that the people who are sitting in those seats are going to know the law, apply the law fairly, have a good temperament, and do the job ethically and with integrity. And when it comes to the Superior Court, these cases affect everybody's rights. It is a court of individual rights. When somebody loses at the trial level in a criminal, civil, family, juvenile, and orphans court matter, those cases, they have an automatic right to challenge that decision to the Superior Court. And then we do the last stage of error correction and error review that happens in those cases. The Superior Court is the busiest intermediate appellate court in the country, deciding over 6,000 decisions a year. And our Supreme Court, which has an extremely important function, is more of a policy-making court. And to give you an idea, it decides approximately 150 decisions a year. So in about 98% of cases, your case is going to end at the Superior Court level. And the Superior Court is affecting your rights. That's what we're here to talk about, right? This is talking about your right to be free from incarceration, your right to parent your children, your right to your health, your wealth, your safety, your family, your job, your inheritance. These are rights that affect everyday Pennsylvanians. And whether or not you are the litigants involved in these cases are going to affect you because the Superior Court is interpreting our Constitution and our statutes. And a law that did not adversely affect you yesterday very well could adversely affect you tomorrow. So it's really important that people start to understand how critical it is that we have good, knowledgeable people sitting in these seats. When we're talking about healthcare access, access to contraception, if we're talking about the right to marry who you choose. A lot of those cases, they'll start in the Court of Common Pleas and they'll come to the Superior Court. In all likelihood, it will end up in the Supreme Court. but it doesn't necessarily happen right away. The Superior Court could be the court that sets the law of the state of Pennsylvania for the next 5, 10, 20 years. And so that is, I would say, the biggest challenge is getting people to understand and appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. Jill's right. You know, I can speak from personal experience. You never think that you're going to end up in court until you do, right? And so we want to make sure that we have the most fair, the most just people who are there. They have our neighbors' lives in their hands. Every single ruling they make. It is so important that if Yin's learned something today from one of these judges, that you go and tell your neighbors about it. Because a lot of people just don't know when it could be their lives who are affected by who's sitting on these important judicial seats. Thank you, Jill. Let's give it up for Jill. All right. And next, for Judge McCaffrey. What do you feel are the biggest dangers to our rights, and how can the courts protect those rights?
That's an easy one. You said you were going to give me a softball question. I didn't realize it was going to be a real softball question.
No, I said I wasn't going to call you a prick. That is what I promised I would.
I still want that for my campaign literature. Thank you. As weird as this is going to sound in this group, the biggest threat that we have in the courtroom right now, and in courts across America, not just in state courts, but the national level, is judicial activism. And that's going to sound a little bit funny coming from a Democrat, right? Because for 50, 60 years, we heard people complain, especially on the right, about the judicial activists on the United States Supreme Court and the Burger Court and the Warren Court that were expanding rights, expanding women's reproductive rights through Roe versus Wade, expanding same-sex marriage rights through Obergefell and things of that cases of that nature, expanding minority rights, affirmative action, things of that nature. And what we've seen recently is a contraction of those rights by judges who stood in front of the American public and told the American public that they were qualified and that they would follow precedent, or what we lawyers call stare decisis. So when you ask about the biggest threat to our courts right now, it's really judicial activists who are running for judge not to be fair and impartial, not to be the final arbiter of what's right and wrong in the courtroom, but to impose an agenda on Pennsylvanians and in Americans. And if you can just give me a moment, and you have to excuse me, I spent 30 years in a courtroom, so I like to walk when I talk. Plus I'm Irish, we just chatter along. But I tell people this all the time, and I think it's important for everybody to understand this. The person you have to thank for where we are right now in America is Donald Trump. I've said that in Democratic functions, and people throw things at me. But I want to tell you why. You see, my mom and dad are from Belfast, Northern Ireland. They immigrated to this country to give their children a better future, a better life. And I've been walking a picket line since I was 4 years old because my mom and dad were both union members and union organizers in Philadelphia. Donald Trump is to be thanked because Donald Trump told America what he was going to do and why he was going to do it. He wasn't interested in putting people on the United States Supreme Court who were fair and impartial. He was interested in putting people on that court to impose an agenda and to roll back the rights that, frankly, we Democrats have taken for granted for the last 60 years. And I tell people two words, and it's important for the two words to be understood in this group, and that's that majorities matter. And I want to explain what that means to you. Bethany just said to you, I sit on the Pennsylvania Superior Court. We are the busiest appellate court in the United States. We handle over 6,500 appeals a year. All right? If Jill Beck and Tamika Lane, Judge Tamika Lane, are victorious and they win, it'll be the first time in my memory that Democrats have had a majority on the Pennsylvania Superior Court. Majorities matter. More importantly, everybody, I asked this question. Donald Trump filed... I have to stop? I'm just getting rolling. All right, Donald Trump filed 61 lawsuits. He won one to overturn the 2020 election. And that was in the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania by a Republican judge. And that case was then overturned by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court with a majority of Democrats. That's why it's critically important that Matt Wolf be elected to the Commonwealth Court. And I'm just going to leave you with one thing, and I know my time's up. But I want everybody to understand this. Roe versus Wade was repealed because we have a majority of right-wing justices on the United States Supreme Court. Affirmative action has been repealed because of the same reason. the most consequential election of our lifetime wasn't Donald Trump, wasn't Joe Biden, wasn't Barack Obama. It was 2015 when we elected 3 justices to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Kevin Doherty, David Wecht, Christine Donahue. They protected voting rights by declaring the unconstitutional gerrymandered districts. They then protected women's rights, they protected workers' rights. That's why we're standing here today, because majorities on these courts matter. When you elect Democrats, Democrats will stand up and protect women's reproductive rights. We will protect workers' rights. We will protect same-sex marriage rights. And that's why I'm running for courts. That's why you need to elect Democrats to these courts.
No, don't drop it. All right. Well, that was awesome. So you guys get the gist, right? We have the Court of Common Pleas. If there were 50 Patricks on the Court of Common Pleas right now, we wouldn't need to worry as much about the appellate courts because they're the fixers. So we need to make sure we send all 3 of them, Matt Wolf for the Commonwealth Court, Tamika Lane with Jill to the Superior Court. We need to make sure that we win every race from the top of the ballot all the way down. And we can't do it without all of you out there together. So now, before I let you go, I'm going to give each of you 1 minute for some final thoughts. What do you want to leave everyone with before you go? And Judge McCaffrey, since you ended, I'm going to let you start this time. Oh, I should have given him the mic. There you go. You're on. You're on.
Is this on? All right, don't start the clock yet. All right. The only thing I want to leave you with is what I just said to you beforehand, because it's critically important for people to understand that. These particular courts mean something to everybody. As Jill just mentioned, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court's the final arbiter. We're the policy court. We are the court that's going to decide and defend these rights. It is critically important that we elect justices who will protect and defend your constitutional rights. And I don't mean just a piece of paper. I mean the rights that we Democrats have fought for 60 years. Again, women's reproductive rights. You think about that? That's literally been rolled back and rolled into the state court. The Dobbs decision that came out last year came out as a result of court packing. We need to do the same thing, because in Pennsylvania we fight back, and the reason we fight back, the way we fight back, is by electing people who share our values to these courts. So thank you for coming out. Thank you for rallying for our rights, because that's what's important. That's what the courts are all about.
Courts are all about. Thank you, Judge McCaffrey. Jill Beck?
I would just tell you that you have an incredible slate of candidates on your statewide bench. You have Dan McCaffrey for Supreme Court, Tamika Lane and Jill Beck for Superior Court, Matt Wolf for Commonwealth Court. And I will tell you, Tamika Lane and I are the only 2 candidates running for Superior Court that are highly recommended by the Pennsylvania Bar Association. And that's kind of a big deal. It's a big undertaking. It's a lot of work to do. And one of the Republican candidates is not recommended. One of them is only recommended. You want someone who's going to go up there, do the job, review the law, apply it as written, and interpret it as written. It's pretty simple. Our legislature does a phenomenal job writing the rules. We interpret and apply them. That is how we do. Well, we try. We try. And when they don't do a phenomenal job, we fix it. But that's what we do. We do not rewrite. We do not restate. We do not redo. We are not judicial activists. We interpret and apply, and that is what you want out of a judge, and that is what we want to do. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jill, and the anchor of the forum, Patrick Sweeney. What do you have to say?
Thank you, Bethany. We've had a lot to think about just in recent days with our former president being indicted for the 4th time. I don't know what, he was thrice indicted until a couple of days ago. I don't know what the word is for 4 times, but he's presumed to be innocent, as are all of my clients until they are convicted. But even as a guy who's a millionaire, who has the resources to defend himself, he is taking to the airwaves and whatever his Twitter alternative is, and going to rallies, and what he's doing is trying to undermine people's faith in our justice system. And at the trial level, this is the fact-finding level. This is the area that people have the most contact with. And why in a society like ours, a democracy, a democratic republic with independent courts, people need to rely on the fact that they are going to be treated fairly when they come to court, because when they leave there, we want them to accept the decisions that are made and understand that, hey, I presented my evidence, it was heard by someone who was fair and impartial, and maybe I didn't win, and maybe there's an opportunity to take it to a higher court and have it reviewed. But in the end, there is a final word, and we as citizens of a republic like this need to understand that when you are treated fairly, you accept that verdict, whether it be a verdict of a jury or a ruling from a higher court. And Donald Trump is doing what he can to undermine that. And you know, I see it sometimes as a public defender. You know, I have cases that I have won because people refuse to come to court and testify against somebody, even in shootings, even in homicides. And I hear heartbreaking things like, we're going to settle this on the street. And that is exactly the wrong approach that anyone should take. There should not be people taking the law into their own hands, quite literally, reprisals of that nature. We need the courts to be the arbiters of our disputes and to resolve our disputes in a nonviolent way where everyone understands they're treated fairly. And Donald Trump will be treated fairly. I can guarantee you that. And I think all of us, if we encounter our courts, especially, I'll endeavor to do the best I can, if I am fortunate to win, to treat people fairly, and people, even if they disagree, have the opportunity to see, hopefully, Judge Beck and Justice McCaffrey to have that hearing. But what is the most important about this election is that we elect people that are dedicated to equal justice, regardless of party, regardless of race and creed and gender and anything that might divide us. We are to be united in respect for equal justice under law. So I thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think we can all agree Donald Trump's a jagoff, right? All right. Thank you all so much. Feel free to have a seat and enjoy the rest of the program. You're welcome. Let's give it up one more time for our Democratic slate of judicial candidates. Woo-hoo!